Oh gosh. Fix myself up here. So anyway, I always want to thank David and for being, I call him the glue that keeps the movement together, because David never sleeps. Talk about never sleeping. I email him in California, it might be 1 o'clock in the morning, so it's before I am here, and I get an email right back from him. So, and then his wife Anna and his son Wesley, who support us and support the movement so well. And thank you, David, for organizing our event here. I think even though this is our final Turd a Piece event, this is the first one that got put on the schedule. So, thank you, David. You can clap. People weren't starting up. What's the matter? I just rode my bike from California and you guys can't even clap. Come on. I know it's hot. So anyway, before I get started, and I want to thank Ryan. I can't believe I never spoke here before, but it's good to be here, and I'm so sorry you're losing it for such a great cause. We need another one of those things. I want to introduce my team. And these two gentlemen have been with me since day one. We left California on April 4th. It was a rainy, very cold day. And we met at my son's grave. That's the day he was killed in Iraq, and it was 9 days previous. And Malcolm and Dan have been with me since the beginning, and I'd like to bring them up here. And Dan, I don't know if Dan will speak because I've been with him for 82 days, and he's just starting to talk to me. And do you want to say something? Say hi.
Sure. Hello. Hello. Like she said, I'm not very big on speeches, but I want to thank everyone who's supported. And thanks, Cindy, for allowing me to be a part of this. It's quite an honor.
This is Dan Levy, and he was from Portland, and he's going to be dropped back off in Phoenix to live after the tour. And he's been photographing, how many pictures? You have like 10,000 or something like that? 10,000 pictures in 3 months he's taken of the tour. Yeah. You can, gosh, are you guys ready? Is this thing on? And you can see the pictures at tourdapiece.org or at the Facebook page. And our driver of the van, the support vehicle, is Malcolm Chaddick, also from Portland, Oregon, and Malcolm will talk.
Thanks all of you for coming out, and thanks to David for arranging all this. About, I don't know, 6 months ago, you and I were chatting on Facebook, and you said something about, hey, I want to ride my bike across the country. You want to come? And I said, yeah.
I thought he was going to ride his bike, though.
Yeah, well, I got injured, so I had to stick with the van, which is all right. It's a pretty long trip, and I've been looking back over the last few days because I'm plotting my course back across the country with the gear. Have a few video interviews to take and some projects to see that we didn't get a chance to take a look at on our way. And what I think is really important to relate about this tour is that we've stopped in some 70-odd communities along the way. And in any of those places that we've had a chance to actually talk to people in audiences like this and various rooms, we've found that there are communities that are becoming stronger because they are turning to each other and approaching local problems with their own solutions and their own resources. And that, to me, that's where the hope for our future really lies. we are kind of all we've got. I think you probably have been reading the papers lately, and you see how completely out of tune with regular folks our government is, and how more and more restrictive they've become, and how less and less of what they do has any good in it for you and me. And we have been in artist communities, artist colonies, I believe they call it, centers of real creative brilliance. We've been where they're doing xeriscape natural farming, and the principal guy there has lived 16 of the last 24 months on rainwater in the worst drought Texas has had in decades. We've run across people who are banding together to put neighborhood fallow land together. All these different property owners are making urban farms. We've been in Detroit, where the community is embattled and has been for a very long time, and found that there's more spirit there than there is in a lot of places, to have it a lot easier. And all of that, the common denominator is that the community is building itself. They're getting practice at running their own affairs, at building and inhabiting the structures that they need to live. And that in itself has been a great reward for me, because I'm kind of a doomer. I don't know if you've ever heard that term. But I tend to look on the low side of things, because that's the general common denominator. And on this tour, I found that there's some things to hope for. So, and as long as people keep meeting in places like this and talking to each other about how to solve their common problems, there will be hope. And that's what happens when Cindy comes places. As David said, people kind of come out of the woodwork. Some of them haven't seen each other for quite a while. And all of a sudden we're talking about new projects or revitalizing older ones. And that message and that magnetism is a gift to the world. And so I'll let her speak. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Malcolm. And this was supposed to be a sign-up sheet so you can get tour updates, but we only have a week left. But if you want to sign up, I also have a podcast and a blog called Cindy Sheehan Soapbox, and I send out I have a new show every week, and I send out one email a week saying who's going to be on the show and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to pass this around. And then Tour de Peace, just because the ride's over on the 3rd of July doesn't mean that the energy is over. So we're going to try to be consolidating everything we've done over the last 90 days to keep on going with this, because we can't stop. So I'm going to pass this around. Just put your name and email if you want to be on the email list. And if you really want to be on the email list, please write your name so I can read it. Because if I can't read it, then I can't put you on the email list. You'd be surprised what I get. Another thing is, we'll pass this around. It's for donations to help us with our expenses. But I'll pass that around after I talk, because after I talk, you're going to be so motivated to open up your hearts and your wallets to give to Tour de Peace. And we have shirts also. That's the end of my commercials. So anyway, this is day 82 of a 90-day trip. And I just remember the first day we were on the tour. We went from Vacaville, California. Like I said, we met at my son's grave and rode bikes to Sacramento, California, going through Davis. And that was a 45-mile bike trip. And guess the longest I ever rode my bike before then? 6 miles. I won't make you guess. Wesley actually made me guess today. A lot of guesses. He wouldn't even give me a hint. So I wasn't going to make you go through all the numbers before you figured out how long I ride my bike. So ride more, right? Well, I got 2 ear infections, so I was sick right up until the day we left. Like a few days before we left, my doctor said, "You're good, you can go." And so 45 miles was my first day riding, but thank goodness it was flat. Because after that day, from California to here, it's straight uphill. It is. There's like, I got so cynical about downhills. I'd be going down this hill, and I'd be thinking, I can't even be happy about this, because I can already see the next one, the next uphill. And one day we went from Seligman, Arizona, to Kingman, Arizona. There was a 1,600-foot elevation in 50 miles, right? So, very steep. That was the first day I made the whole ride going uphill. So anyway, you go out of Seligman, and you're climbing, then you have this steep downhill. And I was thinking, oh, this is not good. This is not good. And it wasn't. You get across the valley and you have to climb up again. So the first day, the first hill that I climbed without stopping, there was a gift shop on top of it, and I bought myself a little shirt to commemorate the day that I rode all the way up my first hill. And here, in case you didn't know, it's very hilly. Very hilly in Virginia, thank you very much. Very hilly and super duper hot. So I'm glad our ride is over, and we made it to Washington, D.C., or washed up D.C., as I like to call it. The southern trip was just a bonus for us to come down here. So, someone asked me, what was your biggest accomplishment on the trip? Christina, I said, the trip. I rode my bike from California. Yeah. I'm 55 years old. I have 4 grandkids. And I didn't have to bring them and drag them with me. But I'm a 55-year-old grandma of 4. And one of our messages is, we need this country from the top down and from the down back up again. We need to lose our addiction to fossil fuels. Yeah. Right? And my message is that if I can ride my bike across the country, you can ride your bike to the grocery store. Yeah. Right? Or you can ride your bike to the bank or your work or wherever. Correct? Right. So that's my message. Because the thing is, like Malcolm said, the problems at the top are so enormous. There are wars, there are oppressions, there are persecutions of whistleblowers, their use of fossil fuels. And I think that am I wrong, or did Obama say he was going to approve the pipeline, right? He didn't say that? Oh, he didn't say. But it's already in. It's already burst in 3 places since we've been riding our bikes. So how could you approve a pipeline that's already installed in many places? So anyway, we feel that the solution has to be community-based. Has to be based in your families, your neighborhoods, your communities, and your towns. So I didn't ride my bike in Charlottesville, I must admit, but I didn't notice a lot of bike lanes, right? And a lot of people that we have met with along the way, their activism is to get their cities to put in more bike lanes, protected bike lanes, protected pedestrian paths. Because when I'm at home, truthfully, I don't have a car, so I ride my bike all over my town. I ride my bike on a sidewalk. Because I think just because I don't want to participate in the fossil fuel economy, I shouldn't put my life into my hands every time I have to go shopping. Or every time I have to go to the be involved in your community. You know, give your friends and family the opportunity to ride your bikes. We've met people at bike co-ops who, besides having a place for people to fix their bikes, they take old bikes and they refurbish them for poor people in the community that can't afford a bike. So that, I think, is a real valuable service to be, it's really hot, to be performing for your community. And so while we've been on this bike tour, Congress passed and Obama signed a bill that had the Monsanto Protection Act in it, where Monsanto cannot be prosecuted for anything they do now or even in the future. They're being protected. What is that when a government protects a private corporation? Fascism, thank you. And so if we don't want GMOs in our food, then we should be growing as much of our own food as we can. We should be participating in farmers markets, right? Or buying local. When you buy food out of season, you're buying somebody else's food that had to be trucked, even shipped on ships. So buying local and buying in season is a big part of environmental sustainability. I just heard today where activists in Oregon picked 2 fields of sugar beets, GMO sugar beets, overnight and then burned them. You know, yeah, that's sending a huge message to Monsanto and the GMOs. That's how they got, I think it was Norway that kicked Monsanto. Well, there's several countries that have, I think about a dozen countries that prevent GMOs, and another maybe 4 or 5 dozen that require labeling. In California, we couldn't even pass a label law. You know why? Because the no on the labeling side, the GMOs and big businesses, pumped $50 million into the bill. The yes side, we only had $8 million. Monsanto matched the yes side penny for penny. Anything we raised, Monsanto gave to the no on 37 proposition. So it's good to be in the streets. It's good to be activists and to do anti-war work, pro-justice work, things like that. But while we're doing it, we have to look around our own communities. And it's a cliche where it says, oh, you know, think globally but act locally. It's a cliche, but it's true. The global problems can be solved locally. And so we've been across this country, like Malcolm said, in 70 different communities. Because once in a while we got a day off. Or it would have been 83 different communities by now. We got to stay like in a couple places 2 nights. Yeah, that's been quite a treat. We felt like we had to dig up our roots after 2 nights staying in one place. So these communities, we have the opportunity to be connected to each other. We have, and you're a good example of it here in Charlottesville. We have people like us who care about peace, who care about the environment, who care about what our children and grandchildren and ourselves eat, who care about civil rights. This administration promised to be the most transparent administration in U.S. history. What a joke. You know, they have been the most opaque administration in American history. And so, well, I don't know why I just said that. I'm sweating so much. I was talking about this administration and blah, 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 whatever. So, somebody bring me back to where I was. Yeah, we got to stay overnight and like.
Except the Obama administration,
favorite. One of the things we did was go to St. Louis and protest in front of Monsanto's headquarters on that global day of protest. But this is an example. That was a Saturday. Guess what? Monsanto's closed on Saturday. And guess what? They closed off the roads up to Monsanto. So we were standing out in front of Monsanto holding signs, which is valuable. But I think what the activists did in Oregon, by picking GMO crops and burning them, sends a bigger message. And that was a community-based action, not a global. It was an action that was targeting a global problem, but it was very local. And that's 2 fields of sugar beets that won't get into of GMO sugar beets that won't get into our food. And people like to think, oh, we have to do big things. You know, but no, we don't have to do big things. You never know what's going to be the tipping point. And a lot of people think that this NSA mining of all of our information and all of our data and all of our emails and all of our phone calls and Facebook, you know, they think that that's because they're analyzing that data that they're mining. Why would they mine the data if they weren't going to analyze it? And they're looking for that tipping point, right? They're looking for how many people on Facebook say, oh my God, this is ridiculous, we need a revolution. And how many people like that post and stuff like that. They're looking for that because they want to stop an Arab Spring. You know, they want to start putting their wheels in motion to stop it or maybe even push it so there could be a violent response to it, right? So if we strengthen our communities, we just have to think, sooner or later, without us doing anything, this empire will collapse, right? Yeah, you can clap. You can clap. That's a good thing. Sooner or later it will, because there never has been one that didn't, right? And we are spread so thin. Everything they're doing is to put Band-Aids on capitalism. It's to put Band-Aids on empire to save themselves, right? So they don't lose any money. They don't lose any power. And you can see it. And maybe this NSA thing too is not to gather information so much on us, but them. That's what happened in the last days of the Roman Empire. The struggle was in the elite. And that empire collapsed. So one of these days it's going to happen. Do we want it to collapse on us? Or do we want to be able to thrive in that collapse? And it's, oh, I know what I'm telling you. Taking over our city councils, taking over our school boards, taking over any board. And, you know, I've run for federal office. I ran for Congress against Nancy Pelosi in 2008. And I came in second, and I ran for vice president last year. I think we came in like 8th or something like that. But next year, I'm going to be running for governor of California because I think we need to. And everybody's like, "Oh, Cindy, you can't do that. Run for something else. Run for Congress. Run for president again, you know, run for the Senate, blah, 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 whatever." The takeover has to be community, state by state. Because I think that the difficulties we have federally are insurmountable. Doesn't mean we don't keep trying to surmount them. Is that dirty? That sounded like I just did a porno line. We don't stop trying, and that's why, you know, they're making it harder and harder for third parties or independents to run for office. You know, they made it almost impossible for us to win against them. Because we might not ever win, but we have to say, we oppose you. And we have to give people an opportunity to vote for somebody that they agree with. Not the lesser of two evils, right? So, gosh, how many of you have run for office before? It's not fun. And, in fact, I still have PTSD from my run against Pelosi. And when I get home from my this tour, I'm going to write a book called I Left My Marbles in San Francisco. As a matter of fact, I wrote it already. I just have to, get it published as soon as I get back from the tour. And I think the book for the tour that I'm going to write, my working title is Downhill is Overrated. Tales from Tour to Peace. And so, I never thought I'd get so cynical about downhills, but they're deceptive. And then we were in Oklahoma. This is another myth. People would say, oh, you're in Oklahoma, at least it's flat. And I'd be, what part of Oklahoma have you ever biked in? Because it certainly isn't flat, it's hills after hills after hills. And someone told me, well, Oklahoma's so flat, you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. So it's not flat. And that's another myth. It's just, but in Oklahoma, it's so deceptive. Because you could see, you're chugging up, chugging up, chugging up, chugging up. And it looks like it's going to go like this. But what it does is go straight. And then about 50 feet later, chug up, chug up, chug up, and then go straight. And like, how can we lose elevation from one place to the next, but still go uphill all the way? It's a tricky country. It really is a tricky country. And so, but I usually, like coming here before, I would fly from California to here. Or I'd be in D.C. and David would come pick me up at the airport or something. I never even drove from California to here. So riding my bike and just fighting this country off at 50-mile chunks at a time has been marvelous. We went from Sacramento, California, where I live, down to Palm Springs, and we picked up Route 66 first at Santa Monica, though, because that's where it starts. Some people in Chicago say that's where it ends, but us in California say that's where Route 66 starts. And they call Route 66 a mother road. And we got so attached to it, being on it. And we went from Santa Monica to where it ends in Chicago. And the people in Chicago say it begins there, but they're not always right. And so it was amazing. Sometimes it doesn't exist. Sometimes Route 66, because they put in I-40 and I-44. So sometimes in Arizona we had to ride our bikes on the interstate. And that was pretty scary. That was like terrifying. Not only does a truck zoom by you going 70 miles an hour, they catch you in their, Wait. They do. They actually catch you, and it was kind of cool though, because it would make you go faster for a little, for a while. And besides that, that's where all the debris is. That's where all the glass and the metal and every garbage is at the side of the road. But Route 66 is in many places the same. But it's the original Route 66. And so you go through these towns. Wesley, have you ever seen that movie Cars? We went to the town where the Cars town Radiator Springs is modeled from. It's called Seligman, Arizona. And the murals along the way are fabulous. And the towns that I-40 went through that were on Route 66 still exist. But the towns that bypassed are ghost towns now. But to me, that's a commentary on our civilization. The car culture we have. And so then we just took various routes from Chicago to here, to Charlottesville. So I would recommend this, riding your bike across the country. You don't have to start in California, though. You can start here and go to California. It's just the most wonderful experience. And like Malcolm said, when we were chatting and I said, I'm going to ride my bike across the country, I did it out of frustration because it was just another election had just passed. 98.4% of people who voted for president voted for either Romney or Obama. 1.6% of people voted for somebody different. And that made me feel so discouraged. It was like in 2009 when he was first elected. I've never voted for him. I voted for Cynthia McKinney in 2008. And 3 days after he was inaugurated, he ordered his first drone strike. Now he's used that little weapon of mass destruction 500 times more than Bush did. And Bush did in 8 years. And Obama's been president for 5 years. So 3 days after he was inaugurated, I had 180,000 people on my email list. Because I had just run for Congress. And a lot of people supported me. But I think they supported me because they thought that was another anti-Bush thing to do. You know, because Pelosi said impeachment was off the table. To me, it was an anti-system thing to do, an anti-two-party system thing to do, to highlight the hypocrisy of, people thinking that Pelosi's some wide-eyed liberal. But she's not. She's queen of the robber class. And so I had 180,000 people on my list. I sent out an email saying, wow, it didn't take them long to become a presidential war criminal. I could watch people delete me. And today, after 5 years, I don't even have 2,000 people on my list. So it has been a struggle. It's been a struggle, but I'd rather struggle than sell out my principles, to the Democratic Party. And so I was frustrated then, and in 13, after the inauguration, I was feeling the same kind of frustration. Some people say the role of the Democratic Party is to demobilize movements. And we saw it in 06, 07 when the Democrats took over Congress. David and I worked really hard. We worked really hard, and then we worked really hard trying to hold them accountable. Right? This is why you got elected. Remember that day when they were sworn in? And we were remember Pelosi said impeachment's off the table? We printed off things that looked like dinner mats or placemats. And we put what we wanted on the table. Impeachment, ending the wars, and new war funding and stuff like that. And we were there to pass one out to every member of Congress saying, it's not your table, Pelosi. It's our table. And this is why we elected you. And so this is why you're Speaker of the House. And of course they immediately abandoned us. But I want to tell you why Rahm Emanuel hates me to this day. And if someone like that hates you, then I would rather have him hate me than like me, that's for sure. But anyway, Rahm Emanuel was he a whip at that point? Well, no, this was when the Democrats took back Congress in 07. He was like one of her henchmen or something, Pelosi's henchmen. Yeah. Well, they were having a press conference to outline the Democratic agenda the day that they were sworn in. And about 75 of us were there to pass out our agenda. then we're going to interrupt him. You know what the first thing was? Ethics reform. Isn't that hilarious? So what were we saying? De-escalate, investigate, troops home now. And so half of us were on one side and half of us were on the other side of Rahm Emanuel, and all the press was there. And when he said ethics reform, David and I kind of gave each other the high sign, and 80 of us started chanting that. And de-escalate, investigate. De-escalate the wars, investigate the Bush administration, troops come down. And Rahm Emanuel looked at us like, oh my God, they're going to hold us accountable too? And instead of just waiting till we stopped, he turned around and walked away. Yeah, he didn't even get any more into his press conference. And so what happened? There was nobody there, and a lot of the press said, well, Cindy, why don't you talk? So I went and I outlined the people's agenda for the press there. So that's why Rahm Emanuel hates me to this day. But he's mayor of Chicago now. I want to tell you, those are the worst roads we have to ride on. I always said that the potholes were the size of Rahm Emanuel. He could actually drown in one on a rainy day. They are so bad there. So I think I've bored you long enough. I'm going to pass this around, and if anybody has any questions, I think it would be a good thing to take some questions. Does anybody have a question? Oh, I know somebody has a question. I'm going to pass this around. No, this is for money. If you have a question, raise your hand.
By the way, folks, I just wanted to drop this in your ear. The main part of the tour is over, but we still have about a month's worth of traveling to do on the way back across to document some of the things that we've missed. So please dig deep. We've actually got to fund some more traveling. And the support team would really like to have gas. Thanks.
Well, and also we're splitting the proceeds for what we have left over between two charities, one that works in Afghanistan and one that works in Iraq. So we wanted to help the people that our country has harmed. David?
I know there are people fasting at the White House tomorrow. There is a young man named Bradley Manning on trial. You're going to various events. What do you recommend for people who have time in the coming days that they do? Okay, awesome. So everybody knows about Bradley Manning, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He's being court-martialed at Fort Meade, Maryland, and the trial was, we went there last week. Somebody talked us into diverting a tour to go to Fort Meade. So we got there Wednesday afternoon, and we were going to go to the trial Thursday and Friday. So I was watching the local news, and I see that they postponed the trial till the following Tuesday. And it's almost like they knew we were coming or something. And so we're going back tomorrow. So we'll be there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And Bradley really needs support in the courtroom. You know, he needs people in the courtroom because that's the only connection he has with the outer world. And I've heard he's getting really demoralized by the lack of support. You know, that courtroom should be filled with people every day supporting him, because I think now he could be getting up to 20 years. So he did plead guilty to some lesser charges. But at first it was death. He could have been executed. And so that, and tomorrow at 12, it's the International UN Day Against Torture or something like that. And there's going to be people in front of the White House wearing the orange jumpsuits. They want 86 people in orange jumpsuits because that's how many people are in Guantanamo waiting to be cleared. I mean, they've been cleared. They're just waiting to go home. And now some of those people in Guantanamo have been on hunger strike for over 100 days. And they're saying that this is the only way we're going to get out of here, by dying. And they're being force-fed. So there are several people around the country who have been on a long-term fast. Diane Wilson, Elliot Adams used to be the president of Veterans for Peace, and somebody else. And there's also a rolling fast, so you can just say you're going to fast one day a week or something like that. And then Saturday, this is a very busy week, there's a protest in front of the CIA at 3 in Langley, Virginia, and that's against drones. And I think the people have filed an indictment against Brennan, right? And so we'll be there at 3 supporting that. And then next Wednesday is our last day for Tour de Peace. We are gathering at Arlington Cemetery, I had to think, and we're going to bike across the Memorial Bridge to the White House, and we're going to have a rally in Arlington. I'm going to speak, Ray McGovern and Deborah Sweet from Rural Can't Wait. We have music, so we're going to have a rally. We're going to ride our bikes, circle the White House, drop off our demands to the president. But we have said that this isn't about the destination, which, as I told you, we call washed up DC. This is about the journey. So we're not spending that much time there. Anytime I spend that much time there, I wind up in jail. And I'd rather not wind up in jail right now. I want to go, I've been away from my grandbabies for 3 months. I have to go home and see so I'm flying out that afternoon. I ride my bike, hook up, and go to the airport. And then there's been a wonderful man in front of the White House every day. His name is Ralph Pointer. His partner, wife, Lynn Stewart, is dying in federal prison. Lynn Stewart defended, at the request of Ramsey Clark, who was a past Attorney General under Johnson, right? Anyway, asked her to help him defend the blind sheik who was accused of the World Trade Center bombing, the first one in 1993. Well, since then, Lynn was arrested and kangaroo court, got convicted of aiding and abetting terrorists. She was given 18 months. And she was on appeal, and a federal judge brought her back to court and gave her 10 years. 10 years. And so she's in Carswell in Fort Worth dying. She's got stage 4 cancer, and we want her to have a compassionate release. So her husband is in front of the White House every day, and he told me, Cindy, I'm going to be here until she's released her, until she dies. So he really needs support, and I think her website is called lynnstewart.org, but it's L-Y-N-N-E. If you can just go and maybe even support it financially, because it takes a lot of money. He's from New York. He's staying here and trying to get support for her. The warden at Carswell has said yes, he approved the compassionate release. We're waiting for the Bureau of Prisons, the Federal Bureau of Prisons to approve. But you know what the problem is? She has too much time to live. The prison has given her 18 to 24 months. So they're saying that that's too much time, so they're not going to release her. Can you imagine being in your 70s, having stage 4 cancer, dying, not seeing your family, and above all that, you're chained to your hospital bed? So every time I start to feel bad, I haven't seen my grandkids, I sleep in a different bed every night, blah, 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 whatever, I just think of Lynn and what she's had. And I get regular letters from Lynn. She has not lost her spirit. She just gives me so much hope in the struggle. And one of the reasons Lynn is where she is because she and her husband have lived in Harlem, taught the people of Harlem. She then got her lawyer's license. She defends people for free. They've been in the anti-war justice struggle for 50 years. you know, and so that's one of the reasons that they wanted her out of the mix. So that's what's going on. You can pick any of them, come support us in our struggles. Did I miss anything? Oh my God, this seems like a lot. Did I miss anything that's coming up? Okay, yes sir.
Yes, I appreciate your talk very much, especially on the environment and local communities and what they can do. But I was wondering, in your travels and all your work with these important issues, have you seen how different communities are able to build communities of peace, not just a small little conventional community, but a community like Charlottesville? What are the steps that you have seen that are helpful for not just protesting,
Right.
which you're doing so much of, which I appreciate, but how do you get from more positive, where people have a sense of security in their way of life and in their community?
Well, even before I came on this tour, I wrote a book called Revolution. I'm sorry, that's my other book. Myth America, the 20 Greatest Myths of the Robber Class and the Case for Revolution. And the case for revolution were these peaceful, sustainable communities. You know, I've seen communities that have local script, or they have what they call time dollars. And I've seen communities with free clinics that are community-based, and, you know, doctors and nurses and dentists and everybody get together and they offer these services. Of course, Malcolm talked about all of the community gardening we're seeing, where people aren't buying land, they're just reclaiming it and planting food. You know, how much vacant land do you have around you? I read an article about a community that every single piece of available land is planted with food. And so if somebody wants a salad, you just walk out, you know, to the thing in the middle of the road and pick some lettuce, right? And there's so many things that we've seen. This one teacher at a school in Kalamazoo they have a peace fair, and it's the whole school that does it, all the grades, and she's got this curriculum that I think should be in every school district. Of course, we have to get on the school boards to get that curriculum into these school districts, where all year they work on peace and then they have a peace festival at the end of the year. Her brother was killed in Vietnam. You know, so she's trying to learn how to give back to her community that way. Oh gosh, can anybody else think of anything?
There's a chapter of the International Transition Towns Movement in Charlottesville, which is engaged in trying to get the community to develop practical, immediate solutions to all these kinds of questions. So that's one group. If you're looking for something to get involved in, but we have over 700 nonprofits in Charlottesville, so whatever you're interested in, there's probably somebody in the city doing it already.
Cooperative, anything from, you know, baby child care cooperative to elder care cooperative, just all kinds of different things that you can be doing. My daughter started a preschool cooperative with the people in her neighborhood, and I was like, oh, you do listen to me. And so, there's just like so many things that we could be involved in. But the Transition Town movement, I think, is a wonderful movement. And if you're interested in these peaceful, sustainable communities, I would suggest looking that up, especially if you have one here in Charlotte. Yes?
To go along with that, you spoke about time dollars. We do have a time bank in Charlottesville, Seagull Time Bank, where you can trade skills or trade services and, you know, buy and use time dollars. And it's online, it's on school, and it's something that started, you know, as a result of wanting to make sustainable communities as well.
I think that what a really cool thing to do too is something called a really free market. And you just like have a space like this maybe, and one Saturday a month the people in the community bring their reusables or repurposable things, and you have a potluck and you just like trade. even trade, you see something that you need, and you take it, and you have this big community event, because it's also a potluck, it's also a meal. You know, I wrote an article a few years ago, because Mao said that revolution is not a dinner party. I think that he meant that it's not easy, but I wrote an article called Revolution is a Potluck. And so that was before the Occupy movement. Because how can we even talk about these things if we stay in our little pods all the time, right? If we don't ever get together and talk about these things. So yeah, there's just a lot of neat ideas that we can do to strengthen not the physical infrastructure, but the community infrastructure in your neighborhoods and towns. Karen.
How's that your resisting paying tax going?
Okay, yeah, I am a war tax refuser now, because I actually have gone to federal court for it. And so I haven't paid my taxes since my son was killed. And I haven't even filed. And not only that, but I was like, when Casey was killed, I felt really bad that I ever paid my taxes. Because I funded my own son's murder, but how many other murders did I fund? And so I never even filed, you know? I was just like, I don't care. But I've been telling the IRS and everybody that I refuse to pay my taxes. And so finally last year, after 8 years, the IRS got my address right. And I've also moved like 10 times since Casey was killed. People think, oh, the IRS, they're so scary. They're just like this big thing. They know where you are at all times. I have a website, and it took them 8 years to find me. So then they finally started getting smart, and they would go to my events that I announced. Like, you know, I said I'm going to be speaking here. They'd come and try to serve me, but they were never there the time I was there. Or somebody would say, hey, that guy's trying to serve me as a politician, you know. And so finally they did go to my house and they served my daughter. And so I had to go to federal court last April. I got the support of the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee. That's the NWTRCC. And if you're thinking of doing it, they have a lot of valuable support and ways that you can do it without like being 100% like me and just being a non-filer. And so with their attorney, an attorney in San Francisco, who's an activist attorney, but he's not a tax attorney, we have the advice of the tax attorney. We went to this hearing in federal court, and I got a magistrate to hear the preliminary case. And what the thing was is that the federal government, the IRS filed a lawsuit through the Department of Justice, and they would file the lawsuit to compel me to cooperate with them. And because I was called to the revenuer's office agent, and I wouldn't answer his questions. I'm like, I'm not participating in my own persecution. I don't have to do that. And so then they sued me. And you know how I found out about the lawsuit? This is hilarious. I was having dinner in the town of Vacaville with a San Francisco activist. She came to town to take me to dinner. And I'm sitting there, and this man was hovering over the table. I thought he was like the manager. He had a tie on and everything. I was finally like, I looked up and I said, what? He goes, are you Cindy Sheehan? And I still thought he was a manager. I was like, oh yeah, you know, shake his hand or whatever. He goes, I'm from KRCA. That's a TV station in Sacramento. I said, oh, what are you doing here? Are you just passing through town, you know, on some story? Nobody ever goes to Vacaville to report anything. And he goes, no, I'm here to see you. I said, what are you here to see me for? What did I do? And what did I do this time? And he said, it's about the lawsuit that the federal government filed against him. Like, what lawsuit the federal government filed against me? And he showed me it on his BlackBerry. He showed me the court paperwork on his BlackBerry. So that's how I found out they sued me. And then we were in court that day, and the magistrate let my attorney go on and on and on and on about the reasons I don't pay my taxes. Right? They usually, if you've been arrested in civil disobedience or civil resistance, you know the judge or magistrate doesn't care. They say, you broke this law, this is your fine. We don't care about your reasons for it. But the magistrate let my attorney go, the wars, killed her son, the torture, the oppression, everything, on and on and on. And so when Dennis was finished, my attorney, the magistrate looked right at me and he said, that sounds like a reasonable response to something that happened to you that was so unreasonable. I know. And so I was just like, I just looked at the attorney, what do they call those? The federal attorney, whatever, U.S. attorney. And I just was like, ha, 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 I just won. And then she said, Judge, will you compel her to comply with us? He goes, I don't think I'm going to do that. He said, I have 45 days to respond. I might not. Who knows? It's lunchtime. This court's in recess. I know. I was like, what? Did that just happen? And so Dennis, my attorney, he said this appears to be a political persecution. And the U.S. attorney's like, oh, that's ridiculous. She broke the law and we're here. But guess what? That was in the 9th District Court something in Sacramento. And they have U.S. attorneys in Sacramento at the court. They sent 3 attorneys from Washington, D.C. to Sacramento to persecute me. But it wasn't political or anything at all. So, yeah, so now the IRS is still like trying to, if I got like somebody left me money or something, they would take it to cover my debt. But I recently also got something from my revenue agent vacating the subpoena. So they can't go digging through my records anymore and stuff. But my Social Security number's on record if I get any money or if I have to work or whatever. I do work, oh my God. I work really hard, but the IRS doesn't know that. So yeah, so thanks for asking. And it's like, people say they're so scary and whatever, and they are. They can really do you damage. They can damage a person if they want to, if they go after it. But to me, when I became a war tax refuser, I had to come to terms with the fact that I might have to go to prison. And my thoughts was I'd rather go to prison than fund these wars, than fund another person's murder or torture or whatever. So I'd rather be in prison than know that I was supporting that with my